The nation's population fund has, since the start of Duterte's administration, launched the Bayanihan campaign, protecting teenage girls' rights to education and reproductive health to achieving development. For more on this, with us now from Makati is Klaus Beck, the United Nations Population Fund country representative. Good to have you with us, Klaus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me, Kathy.
So how's the program coming along so far? You launched Bayanihan in July 2016. That was just months before Duterte signed into law the strengthening of the access to modern family planning.
That's true. We launched it last year, and this campaign is really taking on full steam this year. It's basically aimed at trying to do something and raise awareness about teenage pregnancy, what we do to address that in terms of investing in health, education, and employment, to really overcome the challenge that we're seeing with a large increase in teenage pregnancy in the Philippines.
When you say full steam, what does that mean? What are the metrics? Because in the Asia Pacific, all the metrics are coming down when it comes to teenage pregnancies, but it's not happening in the Philippines, at least not yet.
That is true. I guess the first step really in addressing the issue is really to create an increased awareness, and I think we've really been able to do that over the last year or so. We now see a lot of momentum. We have the Philippine government fully on board with this. The new Philippine Development Plan has a very clear chapter that has areas related to addressing teenage pregnancy. We see legislative action in Congress, both houses of Congress. There are bills now pending on what to do to really move forward on teenage pregnancy. And at the community level, we are having a number of talks together with the Vice President and her office to really talk to young girls and young boys about what's going on out there, why is it happening, what can we do about it, to really gather momentum and mobilize communities to address the issue. That's why the campaign is called Bayanihan, the spirit of Bayanihan, and working together to help address issues and challenges of young girls.
Now, let's just take a step back, Klaus. I mean, all this is about helping protect teenage girls, exercise their rights to education, as well as reproductive health. Why is this important, and in the context of achieving development?
Well, it's critically important. I mean, first of all, young girls who get pregnant early, they are more likely not to finish high school, which means that they are less likely to have a good income in life. We know that among those who get pregnant, only 65% are able to complete high school, but those who do not become pregnant, 72% complete high school. So that's one thing. We also know that they have less income potential over their lifetime. For instance, those who become pregnant early, we know a generation of those, the foregone earnings they have over their lifetime is 33 billion pesos. So it's like 1.1% of the GDP that is lost because of these early teenage pregnancies. So it has an impact on the lives of the girls themselves, but it also has a big impact on the overall economy of the country.
Okay, let's talk about policy implementation. Is that getting in the way? Because I understand that still some of the provisions of the Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health, or the RPRH law, are still under the Supreme Court's temporary restraining order. In what way has that impeded your delivery of these unmet needs at the UNFPA?
Well, the bigger picture, those challenges goes beyond the issues of young girls. Those are issues related to access to various types of contraceptives, most specifically the implants, which is something that women can use that gives them 3 years of protection against pregnancy. That is the one that has been challenged in the Supreme Court and has been under a TRO by the Supreme Court. So that has meant that the choices that women have in terms of what contraceptive methods to use has been more restricted than it had to be. And when that is the case, we know less women will be using contraceptives. So in that way, it's true, it has been a challenge to the implementation of the law. The legal challenges have had an impact.
I know that you called on the Duterte administration July of last year to prioritize policies and programs to harness the potential of the young. So how has the government gone on in helping teenage girls make responsible choices 1 year on?
Well, I mean, I think maybe go back to why is it that young girls get pregnant? It's because they don't know how they get pregnant, and even if they would know how they get pregnant, they wouldn't have access to how to protect themselves from pregnancy. So that basically means that they don't have the information and they don't have access to services. So those are the two things we need to work at. And currently, the challenge is that the legal setup is such that young girls and young boys who want to access modern family planning are not allowed to do so without parental consent. That means if you're less than 18, you can only do so if you ask your mom and dad for agreement. And that is a challenge. We know that in many countries, not just in the Philippines, young people would not ask their parents whether they can use modern family planning. So that is a challenge that will continue to be there even once the TOs are lifted, because that is a challenge of young people having access to exercise their reproductive rights and to make the good choices in life related to their health.
So you want that repealed?
Well, I'm saying that the way the current legislation is there, we know that it has an impact. And I think we believe that based on also international agreements related to human rights, that it's young people also have a right to make decisions over their own bodies, and they also a right to make decisions on their own health. Sometimes, and most likely, we would want them to make those decisions with their parents, but we all know that is not always possible. Sometimes parents are not very much present in young people's lives. Some may not be physically present also. So it's not easy for every young person to have that opportunity to have a strong family relationship where they're able to talk to your parents about these very difficult and very personal issues.
Yeah, the bills that you mentioned pending in Congress supportive of family planning, is any of them going to support the challenge that you just mentioned right now?
Well, we'll have to see, because the current draft that is pending, different drafts in the House and in the Senate. So we'll have to see how all the consultations pan out. But I think we are hoping that if you really want to address teenage pregnancy, which also means basically saving young people's lives, because some of these young girls unfortunately die giving birth, then it's really a life-saving measure we are looking at. So it's not just a question of choice and rights, but it's also a life-saving measure. And this is the escape valve that I think UNFPA believes really needs to be there, that young people, if they don't have the support of their family and the network they need, then they really need to have an opportunity to make those choices for themselves, so they don't get into jeopardy, life-threatening circumstances that they find themselves in.
All right, broader picture and linking this to inclusive growth, how much of a window do you think does the Philippines still have left before it misses the fleeting opportunity for economic development, or the so-called demographic dividend?
Well, the gap is closing, and it's closing fast. If we don't see a full implementation of the RPRH law, if we don't see a full implementation of the K-12 program in terms of young people finishing 12 years of education, and if we don't see a much better link between those who finish education and getting into productive employment that is also well paid, then I'm afraid there wouldn't even be any demographic dividend to be had for the Philippines. So you really need to address those three things: making sure that education is there, that access to reproductive health services, particular family planning, and also access to productive and well-paid employment. And that's also what we hear from businesses, that many businesses are saying to us, young people that are coming out of school are not really ready we cannot really employ them. And that's just going to be worse, particularly if young people also become more and more pregnant. That means that more and more of them will fall out of the labor market or may never really enter the labor market. And I don't think the Philippines can afford that.
All right. Well, thank you for keeping us up to speed and for the assessment there. Klaus Beck, the country manager of the United Nations Population Fund in Makati.